We have some breaking news just coming in this morning. U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States has completed successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. In a post on Truth Social, the U.S. president said all planes are now outside of Iran airspace. He said a full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, that is Fordow. He also said that all planes are safely on their way home. He has added that now is a time for peace. Now, this is the latest that we're getting in. This is the first ever involvement of the U.S. in the Israel-Iran war till now. United States, this is according to Donald Trump, who says that the United States has completed successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. In a post on Truth Social, the U.S. president has said that all the planes are now outside of the Iranian airspace. And this is the latest that we are picking up from there. Now, of course, this comes after U.S. president had asked for 2 weeks. He said 2 weeks, and then now we have this breaking news just coming in. The U.S. has now attacked these nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. In a post on Truth Social, the U.S. president said all the planes are now outside of Iran airspace. Now, another Truth Social post which Donald Trump had posted said Fordow is gone. All right, to discuss more and to get more information, we have our correspondent Susan Teherani joining us right now. Susan, big news just coming in. This is the first U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran war. What is the latest that you can pick in right now?
Right, absolutely. That post by President Donald Trump really reverberated not only on social media and news outlets, but around the world and across the Middle East as well, as we're getting reactions. Just to bring our viewers up to speed, Fordow, as you well know, is deeply buried enrichment complex, making it extremely hard to hit. Only bunker buster munitions can get and penetrate into that. These are carried by B-2 bombers. Those are the ones that only the United States has and can reach effectively. The United States dropped a, quote, full payload of bombs on Fordow. That was its primary target. This is according to President Trump. And then you have the Natanz nuclear facility, which Israel has been bombing for the last 9 days. However, they admitted and acknowledged that there is an underground section that Israel couldn't get to. And of course, Esfahan, the technology center, known as really the facility that focuses on uranium conversion. This is where they believed is where you would take a peaceful nuclear activity and turn it into perhaps a nuclear bomb. So what we know now is President Trump has acknowledged publicly that these airstrikes at these 3 sites were carried out, and American forces and planes are out of Iranian airspace. What we don't know right now is the damage assessment. There has been no official post-strike survey results where we can figure out whether or not, to what extent these facilities have been damaged, although President Trump did just post on Truth Social once again that Fordow is gone. We're going to hear from the president at around 10 p.m. Washington time. That's in about an hour and a half from now, a little less than that. He's going to be addressing the nation from the White House, and I think we'll get a better understanding on where the United States stands. But there is no doubt that at this point, all eyes are on Iran and whether or not they decide to retaliate, how they decide to retaliate, and what steps they want to take next.
Right, and he also tweeted it's the time for peace, which is interesting because we've had Iranian Supreme Leader Iran saying that if at all U.S. does get involved, U.S. will pay a heavy price. What kind of reaction are we expecting from Iran? And was it not expected after Trump actually took this decision?
Well, that's a really interesting question because you really have to understand where Iran stands right now. Its proxies have been very weakened, not only due to Israeli strikes, but also because of those really heavy sanctions and also just militarily, kinetically, and whatnot across the region. So how much capability militarily Iran has right now is really a big question mark, and how much it can retaliate, to what extent. Of course, you have, groups in Iraq, you have the Houthis, of course, in Yemen, and others, but to really carry out and have the power that it did, perhaps even 5 years ago, you really don't see that kind of power that Iran has, notably through its proxies, and because so much of its capabilities have been diminished because of sanctions. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is how are U.S. aircrafts really able to get into Iranian airspace? There's no doubt that Israel completely controls Iran's airspace. So what options does Iran have right now to take? What kind of retaliatory measures does it want to take? And when President Trump talks about peace, is he talking about peace through strength, as his motto has been with the MAGA movement, where we, go ahead and carry out these strikes, for example, and then we hope that peace will prevail because the other side really can't do anything? Or is he talking about some kind of peace where Iran will finally come to the negotiating table for something? Who knows what at this point? We have to see what the damage has been. So you're right, that's a very vague statement, but we have to be realistic on how much Iran can retaliate at this point.
All right, Susan, just stay with me right here. We're just going to go to our guest who's joining us live. John Earth is joining us live. He's a senior policy director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. He's joining us from Washington, and he's also the former member of the U.S. delegation to NATO. Thank you so much for joining us. Big news just coming in. U.S. has now involved itself in the Israel-Iran war. Your first reactions to this?
I think that we have to wait and see exactly what the attacks struck and what the damage is. I think also that the attacks themselves make little sense in the absence of a broader, more comprehensive strategy to bring the war to an end. If they're just an attack to destroy or damage Iran's nuclear facilities, then there would be little point because Iran can simply rebuild. And then the option would be to attack them again and again and repeat the process again and again as necessary. So I'd like to understand that this is part of a larger strategy and there is some diplomacy involved as well, and it's not just the use of the military option.
Right. And we're just getting some news coming in. Sources say the deputy political director of the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting has just said that Iran has evacuated 3 nuclear sites for some time. This is the latest that we're getting in. What kind of retaliation are we expecting from Iran? Because we did hear from Iran's Supreme Leader and Iran as well saying that, of course, we will retaliate and U.S. will pay a heavy price if it involves itself.
In the past, Iranian retaliation has looked like attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East, U.S. forces in the region, and it is involved using proxies such as the Houthis, such as Hezbollah, some of the other groups that take their orders from Tehran. As Susan said a few minutes ago, these proxies have been degraded over the last year, so we're going to have to wait and see what means are at Iran's disposal and to make such retaliation.
Right, and also we've heard from many analysts that we've been talking to that eliminating and completely washing off nuclear sites in Iran is actually impossible. How do you assess these military actions? And clearly some U.S. intel saying that Fordow is gone. How do you react to that? Is that even possible?
It would seem very unlikely that it is gone because it's a very large site and it's very deeply underground. I would take that to mean that the initial assessment is that it be inoperable, but it's difficult to understand how it would be possible to make such an assessment on such a short time frame following the attacks. These things normally take some time to do, and some careful assessment of the visual and other evidence from the site following an attack. So I think it means that the initial assessment is that the attack was successful in achieving its goals, and that it is considered to have struck what was intended to be struck.
Absolutely. I'd like to go to our correspondent, Susan, again. We've had some kind of reactions from earlier, a few weeks ago. We had the Republicans and Democrats quarreling over if this is a good decision. How is the U.S. reacting to this? Any reactions have come so far?
I did see a reaction on social media from Thomas Massie. He's a Republican. He said that President Trump's attacks against Iran are unconstitutional. Not surprising coming from him, but of course we'll be getting more reactions as just by the minute, really, as we're just, monitoring, and we're seeing not only reaction from inside the United States, but also around the world as well.
All right. Of course, Mr. Earth, I'll come back to you. Now, while tweeting, Donald Trump had also said that now is a time for peace. How do you react to this statement?
I think that this reflects what President Trump has been saying all along, that he would like to see an end to the war as quickly as possible, that he would like to see some kind of deal made that would end Iran's enrichment of uranium, and that he would like to see an end to the attacks back and forth between Iran and Israel. I think that he made the decision to involve U.S. forces in the hopes that by destroying or significantly degrading these nuclear facilities, that the reason for the violence would be gone, and there would be no further need for these attacks.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we have some reports that, or we don't know if Trump had actually, some days ago, we were talking about if the Pentagon is going to be thinking about it, the Congress is going to be thinking about it. How do you react to how Congress or Pentagon will be reacting to this? And was this all planned beforehand? And how do we go into such an attack?
It is something that the U.S. military has plans for on a regular basis. The U.S. military is probably the best organization in the world for planning things in advance. They have many operations that they've been planning for years. So it was merely a case of taking the plans that they had already made and putting them into operation. What bothers me is that this was done without congressional authorization. The U.S. Constitution is very clear that declaring war is a congressional prerogative. And this is clearly an act of war, and it was done without congressional authorization. So I think we're going to have to see in the coming days and weeks how this is explained and what the legality actually is here.
And how would you assess this attack on these three facilities? Of course, we need to wait and see what kind of reactions or what kind of effect it had. But how do you analyze this whole attack on nuclear sites? How much of a danger is it?
I think you're absolutely right. We're going to have to wait and see. It will take some time for the damage, the true extent of the damage done to be known. And I think that that's going to be part of the assessment that will be made in the next few days.
Absolutely. Of course, I would like to also, we were also talking about all these diplomatic movements that were taking place just a few days ago where France, UK was also involved. How do you analyze the diplomatic angle to this whole issue after this direct involvement of US?
I'm a professional diplomat, so I'm always in favor of a diplomatic approach. But it does not seem like the European initiatives gained much traction. From what I understand, Iran was very negative in their response to the French proposals and turned them down without much interest. So I don't think it was very clear that there was not much possibility for the diplomatic proposals to do much good, and that probably was a factor in the decision to try a military solution in this case.
Right, we were also analyzing Iran's reaction, and we were saying that Iran might not be in a position right now militarily to counter. But do you think is this a way to bring Iran to the table, and will they after this attack on nuclear sites?
I would expect that Iran's initial reaction would be very strongly negative. That they will try to respond militarily through what means are available. Through ballistic missiles, through drone attacks and what proxies they have, and through the state-sponsored terrorism tools that they have at their disposal. It may be that in time, some cooler heads will prevail in Tehran, and they will decide that it is better to enter into negotiation to stop the cycle of violence rather than go through this again and again in the future. That they don't want to have their nuclear and other facilities hit repeatedly, and so they can find a way to make a deal where they prevent this from happening in the future.
All right, of course, I'll come to you, Susan. Now, we know that war or situation rooms were being held for a long time. Do you think this could have, this is not something that was taken right after, but it was all planned out? But also saying, we also had reports that we have some 6 F-2 bombers moving to Guam. Was this all planned out?
So according to correspondents that I'm talking to that have been working at the Pentagon for a very long time or have been covering the White House, they believe that this was one of the most secretive operations that they have ever covered. They really didn't see or hear any leaks coming out in that sense from the Pentagon or the White House. But also, I think it was it appears from what we know now, while all eyes were on the West, trying to track these bombers going to Guam, perhaps, the United States had something planned from the east where no one was watching. So, it's hard to imagine that President Trump would go at this sort of at a whim. It appears that it was planned out. I don't know how many people really believed him when he said that he'll wait 2 weeks and then figure out what's going to happen in hopes that some kind of negotiation is going to happen. Knowing President Trump and how he used to always criticize former President Joe Biden for coming in front of the cameras and sort of talking about what he was going to do next, whether it was regarding Ukraine or somewhere else, it was clear that he wasn't going to show his cards. But nonetheless, it appears that this, we were getting reports that all options are on the table. The United States and the White House and CENTCOM, they were all sort of assessing the different options militarily that they can carry out should the United States have to. And it appears that it was well thought out. Now, I think the question is, what happens after this? Is this something that the United States wanted to do, sort of one and done, or is there going to be, more attacks against Iran? Those are questions. Again, as John mentioned, really we have to see the damage assessment first.
Right, Susan, I'll come back to you, Mr. Erth. Now, we've got some reactions from the former Israeli defense minister. He said that the attacks on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities were a bold decision and carried out for all of humanity. How do you react to that?
I think that this is something that the Israeli government has been supporting for a long time. The U.S. has far greater military capabilities than Israel, and they have been eager to get U.S. involvement in their particular conflict with Iran. The question for me as an American has always been, is it really in the U.S. interest to do so? And that I don't think has been answered yet.
Of course, we'll have to wait and see how this actually brings in Iran to the table, because we've seen Trump saying that now is the time for peace. How do you react to this comment right after U.S. goes and bombs the nuclear sites and Trump now says it's time for peace?
I think that this is what he's hoping will happen, that the shock of being hit by the U.S. will be enough to get Iran to look to end this as soon as possible. and not to want to take any more damage, not to want to get bombed again, and to look for a quick, peaceful resolution. But that's not been the history of airstrikes. We can see this going on right now in Ukraine, where Kiev is being hit from the air by Russia pretty much on a nightly basis, and has been done. It has been hit pretty regularly for over 3 years, and that has not led to peace between Russia and Ukraine. We saw London getting hit during the Second World War by German bombers all the time. That did not lead the UK to give up. It's difficult to compel peace through air power. The only time it happened was in 1999 in Serbia, and that was a rather unique set of circumstances that is not duplicated here.
Right, and also if you could also analyze for us, what kind of reactions can we expect from Iran as of now?
I'm not an expert on Iran, so I don't want to go into what the reactions are going to be. I think that we are already seeing some of them, and I think that there's going to be some determination to strike back.
Right, and so we've have heard Iran saying that there has been speculation that they might attack these U.S. bases. Do you think U.S. had not considered that?
I'm sure that the U.S. has considered that, and I'm sure that the bases are on high security alerts, and that they're taking all the precautions that they know to ensure that the security is at the highest possible levels.
Right, of course. So we have some reactions also coming in, the Congress criticizing the administration for not seeking congressional approval. What kind of reactions or, will this have after these attacks?
It's going to be a serious question. The Constitution is very clear that an act of war such as this would require a congressional resolution. Now, the White House is likely to present this as being something that the safety of the country made necessary, that this was an urgent issue, and that striking Iran's nuclear capacity was necessary to do on an urgent basis, and there was no time to wait for Congress to act. I think that that's a little bit of a tenuous connection to make, but we'll see how this plays out. There will be a strong debate in Congress over this in the next few weeks.
Or of course, exactly. We're of course going to be looking at how this all goes on and what kind of reaction we see from Iran. But of course, again, I would like to come on the table diplomatically. Is there any way after this whole involvement of U.S. that we get to see some kind of diplomacy and any kind of effort towards a ceasefire?
Well, again, you're asking a professional diplomat if there's space for diplomacy, and so I'm always going to say yes. Just like if you ask someone wearing a uniform if there is a time for military action, he's going to say yes, it would be appropriate to drop a bomb. I think there's always time and place for diplomatic negotiation, and I think that there could be an opening after this bombing to say we have now a space in which Iran has to decide if and when and how they're going to rebuild these nuclear facilities. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about doing it under full UN safeguards. Let's talk about reinstituting the transparency and verification provisions of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, so that if the nuclear program is peaceful as Iran claims it is, we can all be sure that there is no diversion to weapons-related activities going on.
All right, of course.
The opportunity is there. We should use it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Susan, I'll come to you as well. We have some reactions coming in the Congress. We've got some reactions from Congress saying this was unconstitutional. What kind of reactions are you gathering, and what kind of reactions do you expect in the future as well?
I expect this to be divided among party lines. Republicans, they've issued statements, except for Thomas Massie that I mentioned, that he said that it was unconstitutional. You have Representative Rick Crawford, a Republican from Arkansas, and the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He praised the strikes. He said that he had been in touch with President Trump leading up to the bombings. Quote unquote, I have been in touch with the White House before this action and will continue to track developments closely with them in the coming days. This is according to his statement. Also, John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, he joined other officials earlier. I think this is important that we note, including Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, at the White House when they went in. Well, first we thought it was the Situation Room and then the Oval Office, and they were there for the strikes in the aftermath. And Ratcliffe had been briefing President Trump in the White House regularly about Iran's nuclear program, and he was there until the very end. We're going to get other statements, but like I said, it's hard to imagine that Republicans, for the most part, aren't going to be standing next to Donald Trump by him because of these strikes. And from what I'm gathering right now from the reports that I'm seeing and what the sentiments that I'm seeing on social media, it appears that way. However, that being said, there are going to be those that are going to be questioning this, debating this. They're going to be asking questions, and ultimately, from what we know of President Trump, it's hard to imagine that he would back down.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Susan, thank you so much and for joining us and giving the latest. Thank you so much, Joan Erith, for joining us on the show and giving your insights.